the Big 12 preview in Athlon's magazine, and I mentioned this even back on Monday or Tuesday with Dave Campbell's or any magazine, Phil Steele or this one, how difficult it must be to be able to print one of these now, knowing by the time it is published, unlike maybe, I guess, in the last 2 or 3 years, you're going to have an occasional change, maybe even a coaching change. But how many changes are possibly even different than when they went to publish or went to the publisher with this magazine? The interesting part to me, here are the bowl team predictions. They have Oklahoma playing Texas in the Big 12 championship game. They have Oklahoma, Kansas, Kansas State, Baylor, Texas Tech and Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Texas making it to a bowl game. None of that includes the incoming 4, Houston, UCF, Brigham Young, or also Cincinnati. So they have 9 teams out of 14 making a bowl game, and they have Texas winning the Big 12 title and being a part of playing in the Cotton Bowl against Utah. Oklahoma would play in the Alamo Bowl against UCLA.
Texas versus Oklahoma is very interesting because I don't quite have those same high hopes for OU, but I'll admit that I'm more of a pessimist when it comes to my teams. That way I'm pleasantly surprised. I think it's kind of like the psychological reasoning behind that, but I guess it's not that crazy because at least I acknowledge that's probably what I'm doing. But, yeah, I don't know that I've seen anything this offseason other than them just acquiring talent, losing guys here and there like everybody else, the same kind of roster attrition and changes that you make as a first-year coach. Outside of that, I'm just not oh, well, they fixed everything, like they're good to go now. I'm a little more hesitant to dive in on a Big 12 championship, or appearance, but you know what? They're Oklahoma, and they've been there more than anybody. They've won it more than anybody, and they're going to take a lot of records, particularly in football, with them when they go out. So I would not put it past the Sooners to be able to make it there. I'm just a little bit more hesitant and full-blown predicting that. The Texas thing I do feel good about. I mean, I get it every year. It's the same kind of thing, and I do think that'll be one of the great things about post-Texas Big 12 is you can kind of just get past all of the usual sort of hype and not speculation, but sort of the hype and the build-up for them. And I know that they haven't been like the top of the media poll every year. Like I think that the voters have been pretty good about that, but they have taken up the amount of attention that you would think that they would more often than not. A lot of the talk is about where they fit into the landscape. So I think when they're not in the picture anymore, it'll be really interesting to see how these are kind of thought through because they do get a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. And you know what? This year I think they deserve it. I think that they've got the team on paper and they've got the additions in place that I really don't know where you look and you go, like, they're not a Big 12 caliber, capable team. I think that they're perfectly set up for it. I'm sure there's probably an area, too, where they're not as strong as maybe others. But just looking at, that offense and all the weapons Quinn Ewers is going to have, and the offensive line is finally at a place where you feel good about it. The defense, I think, is going to be pretty good, even though they've got a lot to replace. I mean, there are some questions, but I'd like their questions in comparison to a lot of others a lot better, right? There's sure things I like a lot better than most others. But I'll tell you what, like, I just saw a couple of Tech fans in, like, the last, I don't know, like in the day or so, that I guess we posted the video of, like, when we did our just kind of loose conversation on who's going to run the Big 12, and basically the end result was nobody's going to. Everybody's going to take a bite out of it. But we were talking, and I'd say I'd put TCU at the top right now. I think I had, like, K-State maybe at 2, Baylor 3, Tech 4. And I had one guy say Tech's top 3, another guy say Tech's 1. And I do think that they have some things in place as well to potentially be that, but I'm not going to put them past teams that have been there, done that, and done it like in the last couple of years. You know what I mean? Like K-State and Baylor both won Big 12 titles in the last couple of years. They've gone on to play in big bowl games. Like they've done it recently, but I understand why there is all that hype. TCU obviously has done it recently. They took it to a level not even Oklahoma's taken it as far as winning a playoff game. But that little crop of 4 right there is going to be really intriguing. And, I think it's going to be a fascinating race in the Big 12 this year. But as far as, like, the teams not making it, I think that, those new 4 certainly maybe jumping into the deep end, it's going to take them a little while to get their bearings about them. I think they all have legitimate question marks that you could say, yeah, maybe they're not quite ready to fully go win 6 games right out of the gate. I don't know that all 4 don't make it, though. Like, I feel like maybe one of them does, but that'll be, like, that'll be fascinating to see just how rocky of a road it is for each one of those teams, and kind of who they are on the other side of playing the schedule that they're getting ready to play. So that's interesting. That's a lot of bowl teams. What'd you say? It's 9 out of 14. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. That's some good payouts if you take care of a business and win 6 games. 9 teams can do that. That'd be pretty good for the league. I think it's probably on par with what they usually do. So you want to get maybe a couple more if you possibly can.
Well, 9 out of 10 is maybe 7 or 8 at times, but 9 out of 10 normally would never have happened. There's always going to be 1 or 2 that just slip below. They drown as far as wins and losses, but 9 out of 14, I mean, if you're going to have 14 teams, that's what you should do.
Yeah, I don't know if they've ever had 9 out of 10. It feels like they're it's 7, probably 7, 8.
There were times it looked like maybe, but eventually, again, the schedule just kind of takes care of itself.
But then you think about you're adding 4 teams and maybe you get 1 more or 2 more bowl spots. And so, that 50% maybe if you get 9 spots in there, that'd be great. That'd be a lot of bowl teams to be able to keep track of and watch. And so that'd be good.
All right, so a part of this Athlon's magazine as well are coaches anonymously scouting a team. For example, and this is part of this is I can't read it as well, but I'll try to do that. When I copied this, I thought it was better than it was. They were a confusing team to play last year. Something was definitely off. Coach Aranda is a really smart defensive coach, but it didn't seem like they really used a lot of stuff he's known for schematically. Guys weren't playing as hard. To be honest, just weird vibe for an Aranda team. The roster was solid. They have had dynamic speed on offense. The quarterback is solid but not remarkable, and Mississippi quarterback Sawyer Robertson could push him. Also, Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator, has a really solid offense. I think they do an exceptional job with their running game. This will be a big season to see how they rebound from 21. It's the year after the step back where you find out about culture and development. Nothing said there was breaking news. We, in fact, have analyzed them, and some of that has been admitted by Aranda and his staff and even players, but that's the anonymous coach discussing the Baylor Bears, and I can't disagree with much of anything that was said.
I mean, I think that's pretty much just reading a season recap of what happened. I mean, we've talked about every single one of those points ad nauseum at this stage. They did have a pretty solid run game, and to think they had that when they were really just running a true freshman 90% of the time has you feeling pretty good about adding a Dominic Richardson and having a Bryson Washington to throw in there along with Quaylen Jones and Richard Reese. I mean, that automatically should be a huge upgrade so long as the O-line can, perform at a certain level. They're losing a lot of guys, but I don't know. It felt like, they weren't All-American last year, so it's not like you got this huge gulf of talent that you're having to make up for. So I think they can make the transition on the O-line a little bit better than, maybe other situations where you're losing multiple draft picks, for example, or something like that. Shapen's got to play better. Like, just bottom line, he has got to be better. If he's what he has been, then you're going to hear the Charlie Brewer chants and or talk on social media, and you're going to have a lot of the same frustrations that have sort of bubbled up at times, certainly over the last year, but over the last year and a half. And really, their quarterback situation just in general has kind of been a hot subject for 3, 4, 5 years now at this point. They have not been super solid as far as just a guy in the reins and being the man and remaining the man and all of that. So Blake Shapen's now got somebody on his back that's, waiting in the wings, and Sawyer Robertson, who I think is much more of a threat than a Kyron Jones obviously was, obviously not having Gary at their disposal. We didn't get to see what that would have looked like. That would have been fascinating if Gary was on the roster last year to see how that would have turned out with the quarterback situation. But, Blake Shapen's got to be better. They made a bunch of, tweaks on all over the roster, but switching defensive coordinators, that was a big move. Aranda's big swing 2 years ago that eventually led to a title was making some staff changes on offense, and, that turned into a Big 12 team the next year, Big 12 championship team the next year, and now they basically did something similar with getting rid of Ron Roberts, like, right away. we'll see how that goes with Matthew Pallage in that seat now. They do have some guys to replace. I've got questions kind of all over that defense, but they seem to be pretty confident. So we'll see. I mean, but yeah, that's a summation of kind of who they've been, and I think that's the question everybody has about them is who are they? Like how nobody really knows how good they might be or how bad they might be or really even what to expect, quite frankly. So it's going to be a mystery until kickoff.
Let's mention 2 or 3 other teams. First of all, the defending champions in Kansas State. They're smart and physical, one of the most complete teams in the league. They can take a philosophy like Matt Campbell at ISU, developmental program, mental discipline, tight family culture, make it work at a higher level more often. They won't be as good without Deuce. He was more important to them than Bijan was at Texas. The guy could ball out. They still very good defensively, and their offensive line is really good. They're an offensive line program, show, don't tell, and they'll fight you same to start the game as they will at the end. With quarterback Howard back, they should be considered a favorite to repeat in the Big 12. They're more talented than all but 1 or 2 teams, probably their mentality tougher than those 2 teams.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I definitely am not dropping them into the middle of the pack or lower part of the pack. I mean, they're right up there in that group I was just talking about with TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech. I think Oklahoma State's a real mystery. That's a team that, probably should get more credit for being a contender in the new Big 12 than they've probably gotten at this point, just because we're all kind of down on them right now at the moment. But K-State is set up well. I mean, They do lose Deuce, and that guy's been such a huge part of what they do, but there's a lot of great vibes around Trayshawn Ward and the others in that stable that they're going to be able to pick up the slack and not miss too much of a beat, or what they do miss, they'll be able to make up for in other ways. So, he's obviously a guy you'd love to have back, but he made his mark, and, he's hopefully going to have good things in store with the Cowboys, but I don't think K-State drops too much as a result of that. Everything else, there are, like Malik Knowles is no longer there. There's some other changes as well, but Deuce is obviously the big one. They've got, they're all-American offensive lineman back, and BB, got Walker Howard back. I mean, they're going to be fine. They're going to be good.
Texas Tech, this is what an assistant coach says about Tech. For all the Texas high school coaching hires, head coach Joey McGuire was a high school coach, as we know, as recently as 2016. I think this one is still an experiment. It's still hard to tell. That's not on Joey. He's done a really solid job there. It's just that they're still not a high-end Big 12 roster. They're still in the – I can't wait to see the Texas Tech fans in our chat room on this one. Again, this is somebody's opinion. It's just that they're still not a high-end Big 12 roster. They're still in the middle of the road, and you can see it when they get off the bus. The offense will be really good. They've basically got everybody back, but they're used to that kind of performance. Having a good offense alone isn't why they hired Joey McGuire. The things we've noticed is the cultural change. They've got a legitimate home field advantage, and when they're up on you, it's just an awful place to play in a game. They're loud as hell. Hiring a high school guy doesn't make Lubbock any closer to Dallas. That's why we're still a little critical. If they're on the same guy, the same guy as Houston, how does that? If they're on the same guy as Houston, how does that end up? It's always been a hard place to build consistency. And it has been, and Kim Coulter yesterday in the chat room, oh my God, we're not going to win a game. Our coaches suck, our players suck. And that's kind of the us against the world mentality. What most of the time you hear with Tech is that even with some teams that have been really good or you thought could do better, or when you've had Patrick Mahomes, it's been 14 years really for anything dynamic. Not that they haven't had some success, but this guy, whoever this coach was, again, it's anonymous, so it could be anybody, but he's just saying, let's tap the brakes and see what happens in year 2. That's probably against the grain, isn't it, Craig, than what most people think 8-5 might end up better in 2023.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with him on some stuff here, and I don't think we have to. I know Tech's got a rabid fan base, but I don't feel like we need to walk on eggshells with them. Not that you are, but like every time somebody says something negative, it's like, oh, chill out, Tech. Like that's part of the deal. And look, like people who want to be, a little hesitant to go ahead and put the crown on their head are totally reasonable in feeling that way. Like I get that there's a ton of hype right now, and they are all over social media, and there's a great recruiting class that's being built up. And they had a great first year, but that doesn't ensure that you win 10, 12 games the following season. But are they set up to be able to do that? Yeah, I think that they are potentially set up to do that. I think that the biggest thing I disagree with him is the whole Lubbock and recruiting thing. Like, I know that's been brought up with Joey McGuire. Hell, I brought that up to Joey McGuire at Big 12 Media Days last year because that is such a thing. And, like, the look on his face, you could just tell he was just sick to death of having to think about this question or answer this question or hearing this question, and I totally understand it because it's still being asked. But, I mean, clearly it's not that big a deal. They got the number 20 class in the country, and I'll tell you what, this is the thing about Lubbock. I lived out there. I lived very much within that community, and it's far as hell away for most people. I had a 7-hour drive, for example. That was not fun. So when I went out there, I was out there. I was out there for, like, some months before I went back. Part of that was by choice. Part of that was like, yeah, I just don't want to drive 7.5 hours back home for like 2 days and then turn right back around and drive 7.5 hours. So, like, you are kind of almost stranded by choice in some ways. But when you're out there, it's pretty damn great, right? Like, when you're out there, it's a great college town. When you're out there and you're a college kid, it's tremendous. I won't speak to being like 40 and living there, but it's a nice community. But we're not talking about recruiting 40-year-olds or, you know, families or whatever. We're talking about recruiting 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And for that purpose, it's really easy to recruit there if you bring somebody on a visit and show them around. It's super easy. It's just, you know, there's this stigma, and I think that they are attacking that stigma and putting some cracks in that stigma. And I think when all is said and done, eventually that talk is going to trail off. So as far as that particular storyline, as far as on the field goes, I think that they're finally going to have some consistency. I don't know how you build off 8 and feel like you made a huge step forward because that was such a big first year. Like, now do you have to win 9 or 10 to feel like you like really made another jump? That's kind of the weird part about jumping out as quickly as they did, because you could in theory have an 8-win season and still like almost have a better year than last year, depending on kind of how it went. But yeah, I mean, I think all the pieces are pretty much in place. You know, maybe there's still some things roster-wise that this person sees or others see that are still in development, but for the most part, I mean, I don't know where you look around and you're really super concerned about any particular area or feel like they don't have playmakers or the ability to really do anything. I think they're really solid. I wouldn't put them in the Big 12 title game, or I won't, you know, in my pick this year. But as far as setting themselves up to have the opportunity, they could be in there this year if things fall the right way. And they certainly are building themselves up to be a regular contender to be in it every year. So, yeah, things are going well in Lubbock, and I think there's every reason to be positive about the direction.
TCU, and then we'll break, and Grayson will come back on many things Baylor as they have another weekend of recruits. A lot of teams are doing that this weekend and have been for the last couple of 3 or 4 weeks and going forward.
Tyler Shug needs to stay healthy, though. That's a big thing.
The secret to their success last season was they could match either the physicality or the athleticism every team in the league. If you wanted to dig in and fight, they could do that. If you wanted to go talent on talent, they could do that and hang. There is no way to recreate that with many guys as they've lost. Max Duggan is a huge loss for them. He made that offense work better than it should have many times. Also, honestly, he just made things happen when plays broke down, overcame some of their deficiencies. With him, it's bigger than just replacing a quarterback. The Briles system should fit pretty well. Sonny Dykes will know how to manage that. They can't repeat what they did last year, but they're set up for a pretty strong future in the league. They're recruiting the state of Texas at a different level, and that's why Sonny's a success. He didn't waste that playoff run at all. They're probably the best brand in the league moving forward. Now, there will be people disagree with that, but there's the summation of TCU.
Yeah, I think that there's reason to feel like they can't replicate last year, because last year just, I mean, in multiple ways fell their way. I mean, there was the K-State, play at the goal line that, like, for the first time it felt like, wait, what just happened here? There's a glitch in the matrix. Like, they didn't get in the end zone. What are you talking about? They lost? What?
You expected them to score.
Yeah, and he almost did. Like, he almost won that game, and then they win the playoff game. And then, obviously the only game they really had no business being in was the Georgia game. And that was, comically bad at a certain point where it's like halfway through and you're just like, do you want to run the clock in the second? That was just the fate for probably 99% of the teams that could have potentially, played Georgia in that game. But, beyond that, I mean, they were in every single one, and more often than not, other than K-State, a big play went their way. And, I don't think that you can replicate that. I do think that that's something that it's just sort of some years the ball bounces your way and some years they don't. And I don't think that you can replicate that. Now, I will say this about what they do with Kaz Kazadi and just his whole focus on the strength of the mental side of things. And, if you watch like clips of him as far as like, in the biggest, most heated, high pressure situations, they aren't going to be the ones to break. And I think Texas Tech has that same mentality. I think that's the mentality that Matt Rule had when he was at Baylor. And I think that's the mentality that obviously Kaz had at Baylor prior to that. They're just going to be super strong mentally and physically, and they're going to be super fast and talented. And I think they're going to all have those things. They just you can't replicate luck in some ways. But I do think you can replace talent, especially in this day and age with the transfer portal. Duggan, what he did, can Chandler Morris duplicate that? I don't know. It's a different thing now. But I think TCU is going to be really good. Like I don't think that they're going to drop off and be like, well, maybe they win 7 games. No, I think that they're going to be right in the thick of things, and just maybe lose a couple games based on the fact that there's not just a couple extra seconds remaining in Waco to get you that one extra second to be able to get the ball down and kick. Get the kickoff or whatever other close calls they had. But yeah, I think they're set up really well with Sonny to just use that transfer portal to replace talent most years. Build up and really do well with developing guys. And yeah, I don't think they're going anywhere.
All right.